Hey, everybody. I am Stephanie Goss, and this is another episode of the Uncharted Podcast. This week on the podcast, Andy and I are in the mailbag, tackling a question from a leader who is wondering how you coach or mentor someone through severe insecurity. And although it is a great question, there's some issues going on here that go far beyond insecurity, and we dive into those more than anything. Buckle up, Buttercup, because we're going to take a ride to Camp Tough Love. Let's get into this.
And now, the Uncharted Podcast.
And we are back. It's me, Dr. Andy Roark, and the one and only Stephanie, the story of us Goss.
How's it going, Andy Roark?
Us. It's fine. We're starting to get some nice days here in South Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah. Things are shaping up. Kids heading into spring break.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Jacqueline's going on college visit trip over spring break.
So crazy.
That's super crazy. Yeah.
So crazy.
Oh yeah.
I feel like we blinked and here we are. Like,
yeah. Oh, it's looming of like, it was brought up. We got a rotisserie chicken for dinner. You know, the Publix rotisserie chicken dinner. And one of the kids was like, why don't we get these anymore? And then we devoured the whole thing immediately. It's like, oh, because it's not enough food for four of us. Uh-huh. That's why. And Hannah was like, looks like we'll be able to eat these again in about a year and a half. You know, I mean, I was like, can't wait for my sister to go to college so I can get back on the rotisserie chicken train.
She's vicious, that kid.
And Jacqueline's eyes like watered, like, I like rotisserie chicken. It's like, baby, you can have rotisserie chicken in college.
Oh, poor Jacqueline.
So, poor Jacqueline. She's the kindest, sweetest child.
Hannah's savage, man.
And her sister is savage. Yeah.
No, and we know where she gets it from. You're savage.
What? That's true.
With your wild phone call habits, and Hannah is taking after you.
That's probably true.
That's how she lives her life.
She does not have what you'd call complete respect for the rules.
No, she does not.
No. How are you doing?
I am good. Same. It's funny because, you know, Riley got her learner's permit in the fall, but apparently I've very intentionally this last year and a half or 2 years been on social media significantly less. And I've been very much more intentional about what I'm posting and as well. And I know that I have made some posts of pictures of her driving. Like I remember when she drove through the drive-through of our favorite coffee stand the first time, and I took a picture and I put it on Instagram. But apparently everybody in my life missed that because I put up a picture of her driving home. We went to a out-of-state gymnastics meet this weekend, and I put up a picture of her driving home on the gram and got like 900 messages from people who were like, oh my God, she's driving. Oh my God, she's driving. Yeah. And I was like, how did everybody miss this? Miss this? But it goes so fast. And I'm like, yes, I know. And everybody's like, she was just a baby. Yes. Yeah. Yes, she was just a baby 15 years ago.
Yeah. I don't miss it. I don't miss it. I wouldn't go back. You know what I mean? I have enjoyed every year more than the previous year.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be tough on me when they leave the nest. But up to this point, it has just gotten better and better.
Yeah. But they are fun. They are fun. Well, speaking of fun, we have got what could be a fun episode. Maybe a visit to Camp Tough Love.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going.
I think that's where we might go today. We got a mailbag, and if you have a question for us and you want to send it in to us so that we can feature your question on an episode, you should head over to unchartedvet.com/mailbag and send us yours, because we always love hearing from listeners. And this is from a longtime listener who said that the podcasts have been so helpful, and we appreciate the feedback that they gave us, which was great. And they have a question, which is, so this is another episode that starts with what seems like a very innocent question. And then you get the backstory and you're like, no, I don't know if this is actually about the question that they asked. So their question that they asked was, how do you mentor or coach someone through severe insecurity? The backstory, however, is that this is a doctor who previously worked with a vet assistant at a practice, and the culture at that practice was toxic. And when they left, and eventually this doctor started their own practice, and the VA and the doctor stayed in touch. And when they opened their own practice, this VA came over and started working for them. And they said, well, I knew that they had worked at some pretty unhealthy and bad or toxic clinic environments. I knew that there probably would be some hiccups, but I was really hoping that things would be different here with me. My team really values positivity and teamwork, respect and empathy, and all of those things are in our core values. And I hoped that the culture change would help this VA flourish and grow, basically, is the gist of it. And it sounds like initially there was some insecurity, and the doctor said, look, I've tried to have off the record conversations with her about, hey, you seem really frustrated. Here's our core values. Like, I really want you to trust your teammates. I want you to fit in. I want you to be here. Like, we value you. We respect you. We want you to be a part of the team. And there's some bad behavior that is happening. And now it has turned from, which they said in the beginning was just kind of some insecurity and being easily frustrated, has turned into a lot more. There's blaming for mistakes. There's isolation from the team, not interacting with others unless they're being directly asked for help. And they said, the hard part is that in contrast, I feel like the rest of the team is super open and welcoming and warm. And they've tried really hard to make this assistant feel welcome. And this doctor is like, look, I have been doing all the things. I've tried talking to them. I've tried getting them to use our EAP. I've tried cheerleading and supporting, but I find it happening more and more. And I'm super frustrated to watch them and watch the stress both on the VA and on the team that come from the outbursts and the negative attitude. And they said, and yet, I'm not ready to give up on this person. I still value them. I know that they're capable of more. I don't want to write them off. I don't want to just fire them because they're not working out. And I would really love to know if you have any suggestions for how to help mentor or coach someone through their insecurity. I want to be able to hold this VA accountable for their mistakes, but when I do, it just seems like it makes them more insecure, more on guard, and more isolated. And even if I wanted to write them up, I don't know what it would be except for they're violating my core value of respect. And they said, I'm super at a loss here and I appreciate any help that you could give me. There was so much to unpack there.
Yeah.
So much to unpack there. And I think that we're going to get on the bus and go to Camp Tough Love.
I think we're probably going to have to go to Camp Tough Love. So here's what I would sort of say. The first thing I would say is I'm really sorry. I'm sorry to the person who wrote this. This sucks. And I've seen this before. We want what's best for people. Yep. And we see sometimes there's some practices in vet medicine are horrible. They're toxic. They're awful. And we've seen people really beaten down by those. And we want to give them a better place to work. And we want them to thrive. And the quote in the news in the mailbag was like, this person is capable of so much more. And it's just it is really hard to want something for someone and to see them really struggle. Sometimes learned behaviors are hard to unlearn. I think about the movie Good Will Hunting, and the whole movie is basically you got this guy who is wildly gifted and talented, but he's had a really hard life and childhood. Mm-hmm. And the whole movie is basically about him trying to work through that so that he can take advantage of this incredible opportunity that's been given to him. And it's awful and it's hard, but we see that there are things where people like earlier experience for them, it molds them or how they are, how they behave.
Yes.
And it's difficult to just cast that off and say, oh, I had a hard time and now I'm done with that and super trusting and vulnerable and open and positive. That's challenging for a lot of people. I think we always have to be careful when we talk about our employees or people in our practice. I think you have to be really careful when you find yourself thinking about what people could do or what they should do. And I think this is where we go to Camp Tough Love, is to say, you're not paying this person for what they might do in the future. And you're not putting them on the team because of what they should do.
Yep.
You're putting them on the team because of what they are doing. And you're keeping them on the team because of what they are doing. And like what might potentially come down the line later on, if there's a significant behavior change, that doesn't matter. That's not how we can evaluate things. We have to evaluate what is actually happening and is this working or is it not working? Yep. And one of the hardest things that I have seen as a business owner is getting past the sadness of looking at people and saying, if you would just choose to have this attitude, or if you would just change your perspective, or if you would just decide that you were not going to engage in this one toxic behavior, then all of these things could work and work well. And I'm confident you would see that behavior positively reinforced. And I have had those thoughts, and they're all for nothing. They just cause you pain because you can't make the person do anything. There's no coaching you can do for someone who doesn't want to change. There's just not. And so it seems like from the letter, this person has been very generous and has really wanted to be supportive and has really wanted to lean in and coach. People can change. I do believe that. But they have to want to change.
Yeah.
And more than that, they have to be willing to do the work. And it is real painful work to change yourself. But people can do it, but they have to want to do it. And so at some point, it's not about you coaching this person. It's, does this person want to lean in and to do these things? And if they don't want to do those things, then you need to own that and recognize that. And then you need to make decisions not based on what could be or what should be or what might be, but are based on how they're going. And looking at the letter, I go, I ain't going very well.
Yeah. I agree with all of that. I think I feel emotionally exhausted for this writer. It is emotionally exhausting to see potential in someone and to feel like everything that they're doing is getting in their own way. And if they could just get out of their own way, things would be so much different. So that frustration that you feel, that emotional exhaustion, is super, super valid. I also think it's really valid to say, like, you have created a strong and positive and supportive culture, and it's not wrong to want to support someone stepping into that. And I think the writer's instinct to say, like, okay, this person has had some horrific experience in the background, and so I'm going to give them some leeway, right? Because the reality is when we have experienced things as humans, to your point, that we have to unlearn that behavior. And when someone has existed in a toxic environment or a toxic workplace, even if they are a very positive person and not generally a toxic person by nature, you don't come out of that unscathed. There are defense mechanisms, things like shifting blame to try and protect yourself, isolating yourself to being defensive. Those are all self-protection methods, right? And so it's not necessarily a conscious choice to say, hey, I'm going to come to work and act like a jerk today. And the reality exists that you can offer a great culture and you can offer a safe space to her and anybody else. But I love your point, Andy, of the person always has to choose it for themselves. And if they don't choose it, there's nothing that you can do to choose it for them. You can't want it more than they do. And I think the last headspace question for me is, coming to acceptance of the fact that you are not responsible for fixing this VA. You're not responsible for fixing her work environment or their work environment. You're not responsible for their past or their present, but you do have a responsibility to the team as a whole. And so as a leader, as a business owner, as a practice owner, at what point do you put the whole team ahead of one person? And so I think getting to that headspace and looking critically at where does the balance lie at this moment is really important, because it doesn't sound like they're just starting to go down this road. It sounds like they have been working on this for a little while, and I could be wrong, but part of your job as a leader is to balance the needs of everybody. And it's admirable that you want to take care of this one VA and you want to support them, and you also have the whole team to consider. Yeah,
I think you're spot on. That balance the needs of everybody. That you and I preach that all the time. Part of it is looking at the consequences here and to say, I'm going to choose I'm going to choose the path where the consequences have the greatest good for everybody.
Yeah.
And continuing to engage with a person who makes the other staff members uncomfortable and damages their work experiences and their culture, the benefit, if there is a benefit to supporting this person, to the detriment of everyone else on the team, I go, well, that's not a very good net positive. The other thing I've found over time, too, is this person's probably not happy. The idea that they're unhappy and they don't fit in with the rest of the team, and that they feel insecure and they're blaming other people, they're probably not loving this job. And so what are you saving them from? You know what I mean? they're in a place where this doesn't seem to be working for them either. And so sort of what is the maximum good? I look at it from that point and say, I'm not sure this is working. We'll lay down some action steps. I've got some advice on how to make one more run at this. But I will say, I think the thing that bothers me the most is it seems like from this letter that things are getting worse, not better.
Yes. Yeah.
And that pattern, that trajectory, that matters. If you said, boy, at first it was rocky, but we have seen steady improvement. You know, how long do I give this? I would be much more optimistic than, hey, you know, at first it kind of held on and now it's sort of going the wrong direction. I would say, ooh, I'm not feeling good about our trajectory. So anyway, let's make one good run at it, and then let's plan. We're gonna do some exit planning, and we'll get a plan together.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. So again, I think it's important to do the emotional work ourselves of this is not up to you to keep this person. And I think that is critically important. You as the owner, as the employer, you have got to decide what does this person need to do in order to continue to be on your team. And you need to do what's best for the team as a whole, meaning balancing everybody's needs. And so there's that of what does this look like? What does this person need to do? And then start with a developmental focus. I would probably, if I was going to go for this right now, I would probably not talk about the things that happened in the past. I would bring this person in and say, you know, Melissa, whatever her name is, Melissa, I want to talk about where we're going to go in the next 3 to 6 months. And so let's talk about sort of your development here and kind of what I'm going to be focusing on and what I need for you to focus on going forward. And it's not about you did this or you did that, but lay out the development plan based on where she is. What are the behaviors that you want to see going forward? What inroads does she needs to make as far as interactions with the rest of the team, as far as participation in the staff meetings, you know, as far as, I don't know, building rapport and trust and working collaboratively with the rest of the group. Let's lay that stuff down and say, this is where we need to see you going in the next 3 months. This is the plan I have for you. Here's your 30, 60, 90-day plan just for general growth. And start getting serious about it. And we're going to coach her on this plan. But you've kind of done the sort of general support thing. And so now it's time to lay down a 30, 60, 90 plan. And we're going to start paying attention here. And it is possible. I'm just going to say this up front. And again, sort of the Camp Tough Love at the beginning. It is possible that you're going to hold her accountable and the wheels are going to fall off.
Yeah.
Meaning you're going to start to say, hey, this is not acceptable. And she's going to kick back and be really upset. And the whole thing's going to detonate and she's not going to be able to work there anymore. I think that there's a very good chance of that. I would tell you, be kind, be gentle, be smart, but also if she detonates this thing, instead of making adjustments that are going to allow her to be a part of the team, I detonate it sooner rather than later and get it over with. Like there's a saying my brother has, which is, you know, that which must happen inevitably should happen immediately. And I don't always know that that's true, but I think there is a grain of truth to it of I'd much rather have a toxic team member blow up and be gone than have them just percolate along slowly, making everyone unhappy for a couple of years and then blow up and have to be gone.
Yeah, you hit on something that's super important. So for me, the first step is, I think, I don't know what has happened previously. I don't know where you started. And I agree with you. Don't make it about the past. And the first thing for me is you have to set clear expectations. And when you do that, you have to, the way that you quote unquote coach someone through insecurity, which is what they asked about, is you have to separate the support from accountability. Those are two different things. And you've done the supportive route. You created an opportunity for them in your new practice. That is the epitome of support. And this VA needs to hear clear expectations and accountability. And so what that looks like is, you know, sitting down and having a conversation and saying something like, you know, hey, I care about you. I believe in you. And I also need you to meet the expectations that I have for my team here at the hospital. Because the reality is it's your practice and you get to define what you want accountability to look like. And if you want a team that is positive, that is respectful, that works together, you can't have that rule apply to everyone except for Marcy at the front desk. Like it has to apply to everybody. And so sitting down, having that conversation, and then framing the feedback and the coaching that you have around the behaviors. I think I appreciate they're trying to tie it to their core values, the writer. And I think this is a time for clarity. And when you say, well, we value respect here, or we value positivity here, that's really vague and generic. And I don't know what that looks like. And in a heightened emotional state, which if someone has a history of things not going well, they're naturally going to be emotionally heightened when you sit down to try and talk to them about it. When you give me that vague, my brain is not going to process that. When you say, hey, when you shift the blame onto another team member, like this morning in the treatment room, when you did XYZ, right? It damages the trust that your teammates have in you. When you lay that example out clearly, my brain is going to have a lot easier time potentially processing that than something that feels super vague and generic. So giving her the support, telling her that you care about her, telling her that you believe in her, and also then being clear, setting the expectations, and then having the actual accountability part, which is I've set the expectation. What does it mean if you don't meet the expectation? And most people immediately jump to the consequences here. But really, it's about what does success look like? So over the next month, I want to see you acknowledging mistakes that get made without shifting the blame to your teammates. And so once a week, we're gonna check in and we're gonna talk about how this past week has gone for you. I want to know how you think it went. I'm gonna be watching and I'm gonna be, supporting and cheerleading you. This is not me sitting here and whacking you with the stick and saying, hey, you were bad. Marcy, you had a crappy week. This is me saying, hey, here's my expectation. This is what I want to see from you. This is how you can know that I'm seeing it from you and what the follow-up from me is going to look like. So separating that support piece out from the accountability, I think, is super important.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna dovetail right on that, and then sort of part of the support piece, lay it down like that, and then I would start this program with a lot of positive reinforcement. I think I would become because I want her to succeed. I really do. And so we've taken developmental focus, we've laid in some support, and now I'm going to start celebrating her doing good work. And it might be stuff where you say, well, I don't do that for other people. And it's like, well, to me, generally, management is very contextual. There are people who need a lot of support at some points in their life.
Yes.
And maybe they don't need it so much other times. And you have a team member who's struggling. That person might need a little bit more of your attention. I don't buy the idea that everybody gets treated equally and exactly the same all the time. I go, no, sometimes people need more of our attention. And other people are able to work much more independently right now. They might need our attention later on. They might, we're going to grow and develop them, and then they'll get our focus at that time during that period of intense growth. But I don't think there's anything wrong with really just trying to lean into this. And remember, we grow people by positive reinforcement. And so I would just want to go to the mat for this person and really try to make them feel appreciated and make sure that they feel seen. And so I would jump in with that. And then I would pair that together when it doesn't happen with gentle coaching, which is a lot of what Stephanie talked about as well, is you've got to speak in specifics. So when you say, hey, this morning, when you said this thing, the perception of the team was that you were blaming them for what happened. Tell me kind of what you were thinking and where your head was at.
Yes.
And yeah, I would start with that. And that's that type of coaching. But you see, it's very curious coaching. It's not, I'm sorry, you failed to meet this specific unstated objective and now you're getting your hand slapped. It's more of a, hey, it sounds like we had maybe a bit of a rough morning. Let's talk about what happened and work on that. I think that the challenge for our writer is going to be trying to figure out what is a specific feedback. It's hard when someone just sort of stamps around and makes everyone uncomfortable. It's hard to say, you're making everyone uncomfortable. And the person goes, well, no, I'm not. And you go, no, I promise you that you are. We have to work on how to sort of frame that type of specific feedback in language. But I do think you need to do that gentle coaching. But it works much better if you are looking for things to be positive about.
I think you're spot on with framing the feedback around the behaviors. And so starting to look at what are the actual behaviors that are happening versus the emotion or the values. And the reality is right now, this person is stuck in, you've tried the nurturing approach. Now it's time to try the direct approach. And so they're stuck in this cycle of you're reassuring them and they're still not trusting it because they're still retreating and they're still acting or they're lashing out. So part of this is self-awareness. And we have been asked this question a lot as well, which is, how do I coach self-awareness for people? And I think for me, a lot of it was, to your point, flipping the script and asking different questions, because I think that if you start to ask them questions that get them to reflect, they'll either do it or they won't. And you'll be able to see whether there's any self-awareness there or not. Now, if someone is going through a really rough patch and they have self-awareness, if you ask them, hey, if somebody else on the team came into the treatment room and slammed the cabinets and made a lot of like heavy sighs, and then somebody asked them, hey, what's wrong? And you asked them that and they didn't respond to you, how would you feel, right? You can put them in their teammates' shoes by giving them an example of the behavior and asking them, hey, if someone was doing this to you, what would you want to say? How would you want to interact with them? What would you want them to do? If there is self-awareness in that person, they're going to be able to see that and be like, oh, I didn't realize that's the way that I was coming across. Yeah. And they're going to be able to be a proactive part of the solution with you. You will also understand the depth of someone's self-awareness when you ask questions like that, because they're either going to think about it, and it may not be in the moment, because some people really do need to process and then come back. But if you give them the opportunity to look at their own behaviors and they can't come back to you and be a part of the solution, when you're being really direct and you're saying, hey, this behavior is happening. When this happens, this is the impact that it has on the team. How are we going to solve this problem? If they can't be a part of that solution, to your point, they're not somebody you want on your team anyways. So it's not necessarily a bad thing if they self-eject, because the reality is, if you don't address the team's frustration, and I promise you that they're frustrated if what this writer has described to us is true, they're already frustrated with the behavior, because they're going to feel like this person's getting a pass for the bad behavior, and resentment is going to build. And so it's really important, I think, to help the team set boundaries as well while you're coaching them. So some of this is coaching them as well. If they're coming to you and telling you, hey, Marcy at the front desk was acting like this today and it's super, super frustrating, some of it is coaching back for them to be like, hey, I see you and I'm working on it. And also, I would love it if you could have a conversation directly with Marcy and tell her how that impacts your day, because then they're going to get it from more than one person. But I think you have to address the team's concerns as well. Yeah. And then I think the last part about accountability, and you said this so well, is what does the timeline look like? Because this cannot be an indefinite thing. This cannot be like someone gets to be negative Nancy and stomp around for 6 months to a year and we're not going to do anything about it. That's how we create toxic environments. And even if the rest of the workplace is great, if it's great except for this one thing, and that one thing impacts everybody on a regular basis, it's not actually great. I completely agree. I think you're so spot on. You know, it's you've got a lot to lose here to our writer. Like, you've got a lot to lose. Like, if you really do have a good team and you really do have a good culture, you want to move to protect it, because that's not guaranteed. Yes. And people change and people are affected and behaviors changed if they're negatively reinforced. And so it sounds like you've got something you really want to keep. And to me, that would make me even more likely, again, back to tough love, to say, I'm not risking this good thing that we've got here for somebody. Like, they've gotten an opportunity and they've gotten supported and everything, and they can step up and do it. And I really hope that they will. But if they choose not to, change, then maybe this just really isn't a good fit. It's just not a good fit for them, which is disappointing. But keeping them there is not kind to them, and it's not kind to the rest of the staff. And so I think that's really true. I think if you have any questions about this, one of my friends, Dr. Lance Rosa, talks about a garden vacation. And so a garden vacation is when you give this person who you're trying to coach, we might get to a place where they just need to take a break, and you can give them a week off and then see what happens to the rest of the team. And if you come in and your clinic is a happier place to be, and you see people smiling and bouncing around, that will show you a glimpse into what your practice would be like if this person's presence was not a part of it. And it's funny how often that can give people clarity and to say, oh boy, when this person went on vacation, everybody was in a really good mood, and I really wish that this is how it was the rest of the time. And I would say, maybe that person needs to be on permanent vacation. Yeah. And I think to the writer's question about, like, how do I would, if I was going to write them up, I wouldn't even know where to start. I think the easiest place to start is with the accountability and just saying, like, hey, you've been here 6 months or however long they've been here. I want you to succeed. And
Yeah.
there's some patterns that I am seeing that are not working for me or for the team. And then you set the timeline, right? You set a timeline with what improvements you want to see and how you expect to see them manifesting. And to your point, this person may not be able to change. I believe that people are capable of change, but learned behaviors are hard to undo. And if they don't, that's their choice. And it is a choice. And letting go of that for yourself and giving yourself the grace to let it go, that it's their decision, it's not your decision, is the important part. Because sometimes the really hard leadership lesson is realizing that not everybody can thrive in the environment that you create. And that is okay. And I will tell you, I have a veterinarian who I have worked with who I absolutely adore. And I hired them straight out of vet school. I met them when they were a young vet. They're not, they've been out of school quite some time now, and I think the world of them. They're a phenomenal clinician. They're great with clients. And what I realized after hiring them to come and work in my practice was that it was not the ideal environment for them. It was not the right fit. They are still a phenomenal veterinarian. They are still a fantastic clinician. And the practice environment that we were in, not the right fit for them. And that's okay. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. And it even got to the point where they were struggling so bad that I thought, maybe I'm going to have to fire them, because they're, as a result, when you're unhappy at your job, like, it starts to show after a while. Yeah. And what I said to them was, I don't want this to have to happen. And I think that you would be happier somewhere else. And like, I'm happy to help make that happen, because the reality is this isn't the right fit for everybody. And that is so, so true. Like, I've had team members, this doctor included, who have gone other places and found the right fit for them. And that's okay. And so even though it feels like your dream, because you left your prior practice and you started your own practice, it still may not be the right environment for them. Yeah. And it could also just be them. And the thing that you have to remember about that is that's a choice that they're making. It's a decision on their part. It's not yours. And that lesson and holding on to those two things, realizing that not everybody's going to be happy in the environment that you create, not everybody's going to thrive in it, and the fact that you can't make everybody be the potential that you see in them. Those are two rough lessons to learn. Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. I think to your point too, as far as, sort of a difficulty of like, how do I even sort of frame this up? I think if you start into this developmental plan, it does make sort of writing these things up a lot easier, because if people decide that they don't want to be there, or they do, that this is not a thing that they really want to be committed to, they often kind of make the choice for you, or when you start to hold sort of people accountable for these types of things, either they work hard on them or the bad behavior escalates, in which case it's much easier to kind of pinpoint and write those things up. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think starting with a good, positive, supportive developmental plan like we laid out, and just going for it and working through it. But you're going to have to be persistent. But I would say to you, this is a big deal for your practice. And so giving your time and effort and energy to it and investing into this person, whether they stay or not, I think that this is something that your team will want you to invest in. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's it. That's all I got. Oh, that was a fun one. Yeah, these things break my heart. These things break my heart. You want people to succeed. Yeah. You know what I mean? You really do. And if they would just do blank, if they could just do blank, if they would just change their perception, then all of this would just be so much easier, and what could be done would be great. And they could be so happy. If they would just change their perception about X, Y, or Z, then they could be happy. And like, it's sad. We see it again and again. Yeah. All right, guys. Have a great week, everybody. And that's a wrap on another episode of the Uncharted Podcast. Thanks for joining us and spending your week with us. If you enjoyed this week's episode, head over to wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. It's the best way to let us know that you love listening. We'll see you next time.